grateful to you for honoring our invitation to share with you our assessment of the President Nana Akufo Addo's first 100 days in office. Kindly permit me to wish all Ghanaians a belated Happy Easter. Ladies and gentlemen, from day one, a heavily plagiarized speech marked a rather inauspicious beginning of the presidency of Nana Addo on the 7th of January 2017. That the president advertised to the whole world in his inaugural address that he has no ideas of his own was most shocking. By that singular act, President Nana Addo gave our dear country its most embarrassing advertisement on the major local and international mass media networks. When he sincerely parroted the speeches of two American presidents, Bill Clinton and George W. Bush, as well as the speech by President Muhammadu Buhari of Nigeria. It is sad to say that for a party that claimed to have the men, they have been struggling to find their feet since that shameful inaugural address. They have so far been unconvincing about their mouth-watering campaign promises. They are not creating jobs for the masses. They are not alleviating hardships, save for the 110 ministers and deputy apparatchiks. But they are terrorizing Ghanaians by unleashing their several partisan paramilitary forces to achieve parochial ends. As you recall, among other promises in 2016, then candidate Akufo Addo said he will ensure, 1, absolute free SHS education for all JHS students, starting from September 2017. 2, immediate and significant reduction in electricity and water tariffs. 3, immediate and significant reduction in fuel prices by abolishing the energy sector levy. 4, payment of all contractors owed within the first 100 days of his government. That was by 17th of April 2017. 5, 1 dam in each of the over 6,000 villages in the northern, upper east, and upper west regions. 6, the full restoration and payment of nursing and teacher training allowances, which is estimated to cost about 637.2 million Ghana cedis per annum for the 2017 fiscal year, without compromising gains made in increasing enrollment since 2013. 7, provision of a total of $275 million, equivalent to 1.292 billion Ghana cedis, for disbursement to all the 275 constituencies for the 2017 fiscal year. 8, establishment of a factory in each of the 216 districts of Ghana. 9, payment of all customers of DKM, God is Love, and other victims of microfinance swindles. 10, provision of jobs for the teeming unemployed youth in Ghana. 11, significant reduction in the corporate tax from 25% to 20%, and 3% special import levy, removing import duty on raw materials and machinery for production, reducing drivers' insurance levies and cost of license, and reducing taxes on companies employing graduates, among others. And 12, that all these are done without borrowing, since all the money needed for these programs could be found in Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, the nationwide and international embarrassment created by the plagiarized speech notwithstanding, we held out hope that in the days following that debacle, clear indications will be given through the initial steps taken by the Akufo Addo Bawumia government to fulfill their many campaign promises. This hope has given way to despair, rejection, and despondency. The Akufo Addo Bawumia government has, too early in the day, proven our elders right. Our elders have for a long wisely held that agrobeso efre anopa. Agrobeso efre anopa. To which the signs of an enthralling game can be detected right from the beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, the early signs of the government of our country under the MPP have been anything but impressive. Instead of an all-action approach towards rolling out their loftily policies and programs, the initial steps in this government, though tentative, give cause for major concern. The first 100 days of this government can be summed up under the following thematic areas. 1, post-election thuggery and terrorism, unlawful dismissal, and intimidation. Long before the MPP came to office, it has earned the dubious distinction as the most violent organization in Ghana. Internal disagreements within the party degenerated into the bloodiest political clashes in the annals of the Fourth Republic. The deaths, injury, and losses incurred by members of that party are well documented. It had been believed by many that these discarded acts would cease once the MPP won power and assumed control of the state security apparatus. Since coming into office on January 7, the Akufo Addo government has given meaning to the saying that the leopard does not change its spots. The MPP has been importing wholesale into government the same act of violence and lawlessness that marked their time in opposition. No sooner had the result of the 2016 election been declared than a ragtag team of bandits, lawyer of MPP and its leader, President Akufo Addo, began to unleash blood-curdling violence on many innocent and law-abiding Ghanaians, especially persons perceived to be NDC. The thugs calling themselves Invisible Forces, Kandahar Boys, and Delta Forces have instituted a reign of terror in many parts of the country, including government facilities and installations. They have also just refused to allow security agencies to fully perform their lawful duties, particularly at the seat of government and at state functions. This monster, created by the MPP and their refusal to allow lawful state security agencies carry out their mandates, is a slap in the faces of all Ghanaians, particularly our distinguished men and women in uniform. Our prayer is that the menace will be brought under control. Ladies and gentlemen, 4 unusual, regrettable, and condemnable dark incidents have shocked the nation since this latest round of MPP lawlessness started. The first, on Monday, 9th of January, 2017, the very first day that President Akufo Addo reported to work at the Flagstaff House, members of the notorious Invisible Forces subjected a senior police officer, ASP Nanka Bruce, to assault and but harassment at no less a place than the seat of government, the Flagstaff House. This tax later went to intimidate his family at home, ransack his house, and tow away his personal vehicles. Secondly, it emerged soon after the Kintampo waterfalls disaster, which sadly claimed the lives of about 19 young and promising teenagers. Just last month, invisible forces have soon after the 2016 elections driven away the professional staff and tour guides who were manning the place. The invisible forces subsequently took over the management of the Kintampo waterfalls without any prior training. There are many who believe that the absence of the trained tour guides who otherwise man the famous waterfalls contributed to this horrible disaster which claimed the lives of 19 promising teenagers. We pray once again that the good Lord should receive their souls in paradise and comfort their families. And we also pray that President Nana Akufo Addo government brings closure to the circumstances which led to the unlawful takeover of the Kintampo waterfalls by his government-sponsored illegal forces loyal to him and the MPP. Ladies and gentlemen, if this singular and sad incident does not constitute an act of deliberate terrorism, then what else could qualify? President Akufo Addo cannot claim to be on the side of peace when he is actively condemning thuggery right from his days in opposition. Thirdly, on 24th March 2017, another group of MPP thugs, this time calling themselves Delta Force, carried out a shocking attack on the Ashanti Regional Security Coordinator at the Regional Coordinating Council in Kumasi. The reason for this senseless act of thuggery was that the said appointee was not their preferred candidate for the job of Regional Security Coordinator, and that his appointment flew in the face of earlier agreements reached with the president. According to the illegal Delta forces, they had been promised their leader was a right and competent man for the post of Ashanti Regional Coordinator. Now the fourth, on Thursday, 6 April 2017, 13 of these Delta forces were arraigned before the Court of Justice, Mary Senchire in Kumasi on account of their assault on the legitimately appointed Ashanti Regional Security Coordinator. Ladies and gentlemen, a greater assault of unimaginable proportion under the Fourth Republic was just in the shadows. The Delta forces physically stormed the Ladies' Justice Court and thumped their noses on the face of justice delivery in Ghana. How could that be? Dissatisfied with her decision to remand them, the MPP forces once again demonstrated their knack of terrorism. They intimidated the judge and everybody who was in the court and its precincts by storming the courtroom and freeing the accused persons, while the police personnel on duty looked on helplessly. These contemptuous acts committed physically right in court and before a judge led to the accused persons freeing from justice that day. We call on President Akufo Addo to urgently step in to assure the judiciary that they can be free to work devoid of fear from physical attack, among others. Ladies and gentlemen, in addition to the 4 incidents listed, attacks led by known MPP officials and executives have unlawfully invaded the homes of prominent members of the NDC and the immediate past government to seize their property, their private property, under the guise of retrieving missing state vehicles. In other instances, these MPP tax have driven away public sector workers in various government agencies and taken over offices. The goons have also attacked schools and driven away caterers feeding school children under the school feeding program. The impunity with which these violent tax have behaved can only stem from tacit support from the highest level of government. This can be the only plausible conclusion, given that no firm and definite final action had been taken against these criminal elements, save for feeble condemnations from the president. And even when state security officials have ventured to act, their actions have been frozen by blatant threats from leading figures in the MPP. Other leading figures in the MPP on a number of occasions have threatened mayhem if these thugs are arrested and prosecuted. It will otherwise have begat its belief that a government that has all the cohesive arms of the state at its disposal will be unable to hold to account its own forces. These are young men engaging in lawlessness, the likes of which have never been seen in the history of the Fourth Republic. This toxic state support is what accounts for the near paralysis of the security agencies to comprehensively intervene and stop the lawlessness. Speaking plainly, the blame for the state of lawlessness afflicting the country must lie squarely with the President Akufo Addo. He is the one who encouraged the training of these thugs by South African mercenaries. He is the one who benefited the most from the intimidation and harassment of his critics within the MPP. During the bloody confrontations within that party between 2013 and 2016, in return for juicy appointments and precious gifts, should he win political power. What was worse, while knowing that the activities of these violent groups violated Ghanaian law, he engaged them to guard his residence when he knew that the right thing to do was to engage the services of professional security firm. The NDC had cautioned in the run-up to the 2016 elections that the violent acts exhibited by various MPP vigilante groups and the support they appeared to be getting from the leader of the MPP at the time represented a clear and present danger to the safety and security of Ghanaians. By failing to take the decisive action against these hoodlums in opposition and now in government, even as they continue to perpetrate violence, President Akufo Addo has done precious little to shed the image of violence which many associate him with. Everything that has happened since Akufo Addo came to power vindicates our position. Sadly, Nana Akufo Addo sowed this wind of thuggery and terrorism in opposition, and Ghana is now reaping the fruits. He got elected against all odds, but it should not construe his electoral victory to mean an endorsement of a violent approach to governance, as we have heard government and MPP spokespersons and surrogates project whenever we have confronted them with these inquiries. The MPP must learn to know that what they have won, to know that what may have won them power will not sustain them in office. Ghana today, under the Akufo Addo government, is witnessing state-sponsored thuggery and terrorism. And we, the citizens, have watched on helplessly as our compatriots have been subjected to brutal assaults, harassment, and intimidation. This state of affairs has come to define the first 100 days of this government. Yeah. And there appears to be no end in sight. We wish to remind the government that the security of Ghanaians, irrespective of their political orientation, irrespective of their profession, is a major responsibility of any government. The MPP has simply failed. We must not, as a people, underestimate what this reign of terror has done to the image and status of our dear nation. Already, the United Nations was compelled on April 10, 2017, to issue a statement calling on President Akufo Addo to call his tax to order. Nothing can be more embarrassing to the country of Kofi Annan, who made Ghana and all people of African descent extremely proud as Secretary General of the United Nations. Today, this is how President Akufo Addo's government rewards Kofi Annan, and this is Ghana's new reputation at the global body on the world stage. Sadly, this spate of thuggery and outright lawlessness will most definitely have a negative impact on attracting foreign investors and tourists into Ghana, which will adversely affect the Ghanaian economy. In the area of security, therefore, the Akufo Addo Bawumia government have been an abysmal failure, and they need to do more in the coming days to earn the confidence of Ghanaians. They need to do more to set the hearts and minds of Ghanaians at peace. They should desist from choosing political expediency over reason and stop turning a blind eye as their attacks unleash more violence on Ghanaians. For the day of reckoning will come, and they will be found wanting. President Akufo Addo, end this violence now. 2, a bloated, wasteful, and ostentatious government, 110 ministers in 100 days. Ladies and gentlemen, one pledge that stood out in the president's heavily plagiarized inaugural speech was the protection of the public purse. The NDC welcomes every attempt at protecting the purse, because protecting the public purse is very simple. In very simple terms, includes avoiding a large and unwieldy government that becomes a drain on state resources. This truism is deeply anchored in research and backed by years of practice. It also means installing a lean government that uses minimal resources to attain optimal outputs. That was part of the impression left with many Ghanaians when President Akufo Addo committed to protecting the public purse. In the past 100 days, everything this government has done points to the exact opposite. We have had 110 ministers in 100 days, and many more MPP party apparatchiks have appointed even without due process. Ghanaians have been shocked with the installation of an unconscionable and most ostentatious government in the history of this country. An unprecedented elephant-sized 110 ministers and deputy ministers have been appointed by President Akufo Addo. By all accounts, this number is absolutely excessive, absolutely unwieldy, absolutely unnecessary, and totally constitute a great burden on the taxpayer. Instead of concentrating on creating jobs for Ghanaians, as promised, the composition of a government has now been turned into a job creation venture for prominent but unemployed members of the MPP. For no other logical explanation can be mastered. While the decision to appoint this elephant-sized government has caused consternation among an overwhelming majority of Ghanaians, the explanations offered for it have been jaw-dropping. We have, for instance, been told by the government propagandists that the appointment of this humongous number of ministers is a way of protecting the public purse. What a paradox. Another weak explanation, this time proffered by the president himself, is that the economy is in such dire straits that requires this large number of ministers to accomplish the task of putting it back on track. Another paradox. We wish to state plainly that what the president has done is far from protecting the purse. It constitutes a direct raid on the economy of the taxpayer. Maintaining the salaries and creature comforts for this large army of ministers will severely burden the poor taxpayer. This appointment relates into 110 bungalows, 110 saloon cars, 110 V8 Toyota Land Cruisers, 110 bodyguards, 220 police guards in their bungalows, and on and on and on. More importantly, it represents a direct breach of his pledge to cut waste in public expenditure. He has acted in a way that will introduce more waste in government finances. Simply put, President Akufo Addo has been wasteful and has not been candid with Ghanaians. Mr. President, prune down your 110 ministers now. Ladies and gentlemen, for instance, it is inexplicable and a needless duplication of function that a whole ministry, Honorable Sarah Adjoa Safo, will be appointed to be in charge of public procurement at the time when the Public Procurement Authority exists, to which the President only recently appointed an executive secretary. What is even more bizarre, the Procurement Act requires the President to appoint 3 representatives to the board of the Procurement Authority, while the PPA is also, by law, under the supervision of the Finance Minister. It simply means the MPP government is centralizing key procurement decisions at the presidency for personal and partisan gain. Ladies and gentlemen, the NDC government amended the Public Procurement Act to enhance its effectiveness. Appointing a minister to be in charge of public procurement amounts to nothing but elongating the long arm of red tapeism, which in itself becomes a potential avenue for corruption. We also find it mind-boggling that 3 ministers will be created out of the Ministry of Transport, namely the Ministry of Aviation, Ministry of Railways, and Ministry of Transportation. An examination of the State of the Nation Address and the 419 budget statement reveals that the Akufo Addo government will not be undertaking any major new transport sector projects in the foreseeable future. At most, they will merely be continuing programs, policies, and projects started by the NDC government. In the aviation sector, for instance, the MPP government has not shown any new policy to project it will undertake beyond completing work on Terminal 3 at the Kotoka International Airport, the new terminals at the Kumasi and Tamale airports, and Ho airports and aerodrome at Wa, all which were started by the NDC administration. Efforts were also well underway to establish a new national airline on public-private partnership basis. In the railway sector, the MPP government will start work on the Tema to Akosombo rail project, which was conceived by the Mahama administration and for which funding of over $300 million was secured by the NDC government. A railway master plan, which will guide the development of the sector, had been drawn up by the Mahama government. Front-end engineering design for vast sections of the Takoradi to Paga rail line had also been undertaken by the Mahama government. In fact, the beginning of that rail line, that is the Sekandi Takoradi via Kojokrom rail line, had been completed and equipped with 2 modern diesel trains. In the maritime sector, both the Tama and Takoradi harbors have undergone major expansion works under the Mahama administration, running into hundreds of millions of dollars. In addition to this, the MPS, that is Meridian Port Services, project was also to take off at the Tama Harbor. This $1.5 million expansion project, when completed, will result in the quadrupling of the current size of the harbor to create several thousands of jobs for the youth. Substantial progress was also made in road transport with the introduction of the Ayalolo bus and expansion of the fleets of the mass transit, Metro Mass Transit. All the above were achieved only with one ministry, the Ministry of Transport, with just a competent minister and a competent deputy under the NDC. There is no indication at all from either the MPP manifesto, campaign pledges, the State of the Nation address, or any other source that the Akufo Addo government will do anything in the transport sector that will even remotely rival what was achieved under its predecessor. No justification, therefore, exists for having 3 different ministries with 6 ministers to work in just one sector when more will not be achieved. This is yet another bad example of a party that claimed to have the men, but have proven per their actions to be incompetent too early in the day. Again, we are completely baffled by the decision to populate the Ministry of Information and Communication with 7 ministers. That is a minister and 3 deputies for information, and a minister and 2 deputies for communication. Under President Mahama, the Information and Communication Ministries were merged and manned by 3 competent hands, a minister and 2 deputies. It simply defies logic that work done by 3 people has suddenly become so complex that even 7 are now required to do it. Are they going to build more national data centers? Are they going to set up more state-owned telecommunication centers? Are they going to beat the gong in every village every morning to disseminate government information? Again and again, this is yet another bad example of a party that claimed to have the men, but have proven per their actions to be incompetent too early in the day. It is worth noting that these 7 ministers are in addition to a phalanx of spokespersons and press secretaries appointed politically to work in ministries, departments, and agencies. This category of appointees adds onto public relations officers who, as civil servants, already work in almost all government agencies. The situation gets murkier when the curious case of the Agric and Education ministries are analyzed. We have a situation where both the Agric and Education ministries have substantive ministers and 3 deputies at Agric and 2 deputies at Education. Yet, ministers of state for Education and Agric have been appointed to work in the same sector at the presidency. Additionally, there are the completely needless portfolios at the presidency, namely, Minister for Business Development. His function can easily be performed by the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Minister for Special Initiatives, an amorphous and nebulous designation whose specific role is yet to be disclosed, especially when all the one this, one that slogan, if they were ever to be implemented, could easily be done by existing ministers or agencies. The Minister for Regional Reorganization, his role and responsibilities can easily be undertaken by the local government ministry, which in any event now has 3 deputies, in addition to the minister. To add insult to injury, there is also a deputy minister for regional reorganization. The bizarre portfolios of Minister for Monitoring and Evaluation and Minister for Planning and are equally needless and are complete waste of resources, given that just about every ministry or agency in Ghana has a monitoring and evaluation and policy planning directorate fairly capable of undertaking this task once the National Development Planning Commission is allowed to carry out its mandates. To compound this problem, many special assistants have been engaged, some of whom wield more power and are better rewarded than chief directors and other civil servants of the various ministry, departments, and agencies. We demand, on behalf of the people of Ghana, the full duplication of the publication of the names and associated compensation packages of all persons engaged in this capacity since Akufo Addo government came into office. Ladies and gentlemen, in the considered view of the NDC, this means indiscriminate approach to appointments completely debases and devalues governance. It creates the unfortunate impression that persons appointed to some of these needless and duplicated portfolios are in to reap material benefits for their roles in the MPP campaign rather than on the basis of functional necessity. A direct and deleterious consequences of this grossly over-bloated 110 ministers and the unprecedented waste and ostentatious that has already crept into the Akufo Addo administration. This also cements the MPP's reputation for lavish taste and penchant for profligate expenditure when in government. The minority in Parliament, during the debate on the budget, lifted the veil on the staggering 1.5 billion Ghana cedis budget for the office of the president, the presidency, for the 2017 fiscal year alone. This figure is alarming to the extent that it is about 200 million more than the amount given to the same office for the entire 4 years of 2012, 2013, 2014, and 2015 of the Mahama administration. This stunning allocation beats the allocations made to 27 ministries in the 2017 budget, at a time when the bulk of government business is conducted by various ministries, departments, and agencies. Several critical state agencies have been asked to keep only an a portion, include all the country's universities and health institutions like Kolebu Teaching Hospital, Konfonoche Teaching Hospital, 37 Military Hospital, the Accra, Pantine, and Akufo Psychiatric Hospital, and a host of other critical agencies whose activities are important for the general well-being of Ghanaians. Ladies and gentlemen, even as these government agencies are tightly squeezed for every city, we have become aware of some very extravagant spending on the comfort of the President Akufo Addo and his government. We know, for instance, that many super luxurious custom-made vehicles have been imported for the use of the President and other government officials, despite the availability of relatively new fleet of vehicles well suited for the transportation of the President. It is now clear that the falsehood put out by the presidency about the supposed missing cars was only a pretext to justify this ostentatious spending in the eyes of the critical Ghanaian public. What is even more worrying is the media gymnastics and acrobatics being churned out by MPP surrogates in the name of the safety of the President as a prelude and justification for the final arrival and use of these vehicles by the President. So we ask, who was President Akufo Addo deceiving when they directed MDAs not to purchase new vehicles? Or we are back to the days of George Orwell's Animal Farm, of 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. And all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others conundrum. President Akufo Addo, no amount of spin can justify the purchase of new vehicles for the presidential fleet, particularly as we are in the know that there are bulletproof cars in perfect shape for your use. We also know that staggering amount of taxpayers' money have been spent on multiple parties and other social events as part of the presidential inaugural activities. We have seen evidence of how millions of taxpayers' money was spent on these parties, at which expensive drinks served included some that were custom-made with the President's name, embossed on them. We call on the President Akufo Addo government to, in the name of transparency and accountability, make public the amount spent on these parties. Ladies and gentlemen, in the area of prudent spending and protecting the public purse, this government, by its actions within the first 100 days, has given indication that it cannot be trusted, and it is not to be trusted. Our resources will not be safe with such a large government that has voracious and elephantine appetites. We wonder how the MPP could so soon abandon the flights of the people and the platform on which they campaign to climb to power. Because, ladies and gentlemen, wobbly economic management and broken promises. Ladies and gentlemen, led by Vice President Bawumia, the MPP in opposition made loud noises about the economy and used the slightest opportunity to run down its management and paint the gloomiest picture imaginable. The president, his vice, and the senior minister, or shall we say the prime minister, appeared not to have recovered from the economic propaganda hangover of the campaign period and have at different times in the last 100 days resorted to that same rhetoric to justify their own wobbly performance. The president is, for instance, on record for claiming that his extraordinary large number of ministers is so because of the need to fix a very terrible economy. These attempts to paint the gloomy picture of the economy than what they inherited has been belied by honest admissions made by the man in charge of the Ghana's finances, Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta, in the budget statement presented to Parliament at the beginning of March this year. In the finance minister's own words, as captured in the budget statement, inflation has been on the downward trend, falling from 19.2% in March 2016 to 15.4% in December 2016. It also dropped to 13.2% in January 2017. The Treasury bill rates had fallen considerably from 24.5% in December 2015 to 16.4% in December 2016. A balance of payment surplus of $247 million was recorded, representing a vast improvement on the deficit of $129 million in 2015. A major improvement was also witnessed in the country's trade balance from a deficit of $1.7 billion in 2016 to a deficit of $3.1 billion, a deficit of $1.7 billion in 2015 to a deficit of $3.1 billion in 2016. This was the result of an increase of 2.7% in export receipts, as well as a decline of 5.3% in imports. The NDC government bequeathed gross foreign reserve as of the end of December 2016, $6.2 billion, up from $5.89 billion at the end of December 2015. This means that an additional $277 million was added to our external assets. This provided import cover of 3.5 months of import cover. The exchange rates of the Ghana cedi remained relatively stable. The Ghana cedi depreciated by 9.6% and against the dollar and 5.3% against the euro. It appreciated 10% against the pound sterling in the interbank markets of 2016. These admissions point to significant gains in the management of the economy under President Mahama and render the narrative of both presidents and vice presidents less than candid. The finance minister also showed in the same presentation that even a fiscal slippage, especially the budget deficit and growth rates, were occasioned by largely exogenous factors, including shortfalls in oil revenue and low commodity prices. Be that it may, the NPP claimed during the electioneering campaign that they will work to improve the economic circumstances of Ghanaians. President Akufo Addo, in particular, accused the NDC administration at the time of intense insensitivity of fuel and electricity prices. More specifically, he promised that immediately after coming into office, he will reduce both fuel and electricity prices. He singled out the energy sector levy as a cost of the hardship and promised to remove them. Contrary to this promise, fuel prices have gone up cumulatively by about 18% in the first 100 days of the Akufo Addo administration, while electricity have not seen any reduction. In fact, we want to find out from President Akufo Addo whether rents have become lower than electricity tariffs since he became president. The energy sector levy remains in place and continues to be the only vehicle through which legacy debts of the energy sector are being amortized. When will the Akufo Addo government scrap this levy, as he promised, so as to reduce electricity tariffs? Ladies and gentlemen, even as the Akufo Addo government details of these key promises, the cost of living has inched up significantly, making life unbearable for many Ghanaians, even in these early days. Transport fares have not been spared. A 15% increase has been slapped on all fares of all destinations, and this has simultaneously triggered further increases in all goods and services. We are fully aware that it is early days yet, but this should remind government that at a time when they appear more interested in bloating the size of government and unleashing violence on innocent citizens and political opponents, economic realities are gnawing hard at the ordinary Ghanaian. What Ghanaians expect is a lowering of the spiraling cost of living in consonance with the promises made to them. Another major promise that President Akufo Addo has broken is his failed promise to Ghanaian contractors. On 31st October 2016, he promised the contractors that he will pay all debts owed them within the first 100 days of his ascension to the presidency. It has been 100 days and still counting. And Ghanaian contractors are asking, Nana Nasikanu Wahi, what has become of this promise? In the last 100 days, the Akufo Addo government has been badly exposed with regards to the funding of their poorly conceived campaign promises. It has become clear that when they evaded critical questions about how they were going to fund the many lofty promises made to Ghanaians, they were in fact exhibiting cluelessness. It is a basic requirement in modern politics to be able to show how campaign promises that have financial implications will be funded. Try as Ghanaians did in the run-up to the election. Candidate Akufo Addo refused to show definitely where money was going to come from to finance these promises. It did not take long for it to become apparent that the MPP indeed had no clue whatsoever how they would fund their promises. It had been taken for granted by the electorate that the MPP, which likes to boast, haughtily that they have the men, will come up with ingenious ways to raise additional revenue to fund such campaign promises, as free SHS and the many one this, one that slogan. Contrary to all advice, President Akufo Addo was emphatic during the election campaign that he will make SHS education instantly free for all SHS graduates once elected. As far as Ghanaians were concerned, this meant that adequate amount will be provided for the budget, in the budget, to cater for the needs of an estimated 1.2 million SHS students due to be in school for the rest of the 2016 and 2017 academic year. A cursory reading of the 2017 budget statement paints a completely different picture continuing students have impliedly been left out of the free SHS program. The budget states that only 467,692 first-year students in 2017-2018 academic year will benefit from the program. The budget was also completely silent on the president's promise in his speech at the Okopiman Senior High Secondary School about 2 months ago that all day students will be fed once a day. Ladies and gentlemen, these are completely at variance with the rosy picture painted for Ghanaians, parents, and students that all they will be required to do is to send their wards to their chosen senior high schools, and government will bear all the cost educating them in the name of free SHS. The Akufo Addo government is, of course, too proud to admit that the NDC's argument and approach to the issue of free SHS was superior than that of the MPP. When we spoke about the need to adopt a systematic approach to the program, we were speaking the unavoidable truth, and subsequent events have vindicated us. But we do not seek vindication. We ask government to fulfill its promise. It is now very clear that the progressively free SHS program introduced in the 2015 and 2016 academic year by President Mahama's government is the most viable option going forward. In fact, SHS students, especially continuing students, were better off under the NDC's progressively free SHS as opposed to the Akufo Addo's version. Under the NDC, a total of 320,000 day students from first to third year benefited from progressively free SHS. In the 2016-2017 academic year, another 120,000 targeted boarding students from deprived communities were roped into the program. This meant that all year groups were fairly represented as against the decision by the current deceitful government to leave out hundreds of thousands of continuing students in their second and third years of study. Now, capping of statutory funds. Ladies and gentlemen, the Akufo Addo government have clearly talked themselves into a quandary. They simply do not have any innovative means of garnering new and additional revenue to finance their poorly conceived promises. They have, in desperation, resorted to raiding existing statutory funds in order to fund their lavish promises. They have done so without regard to the serious effect this will have on crucial sectors like education, health, sanitation, and the provision of other essential services in our various communities. The GET Fund, since it was instituted by the NDC, has become the single most important source of funding for the provision of badly needed infrastructure and other requirements at all levels of education. The slashing of the allocation of GET Fund, therefore, will cripple the country's education system. Similar concerns exist for the National Health Insurance Scheme and the District Assembly Common Fund. Government decision to cap the statutory fund is in bad faith and a breach of trust. It will impoverish and emanciate the national health insurance beyond one's imagination. It will price healthcare beyond the reach of Ghanaians. Ghanaians will be shortchanged, and the money meant for healthcare will be sent to the office of the president to meet the gargantuan allocation of $1.5 billion. In similar vein, the districts will also suffer heavy revenue shortfalls, a situation which completely reverses the strides made in achieving fiscal decentralization. Dr. Bawumia's propaganda show. Ladies and gentlemen, we have taken note of the Dr. Bawumia's 100-day events organized under the auspices of Media Group yesterday. We are not unaware of the rather reprehensible behind-the-scenes maneuvers by Ghana's Vice President, His Excellency Alhaji Muhammadu Bawumia, to use this event to arm twisting to force an apology from the multimedia group following the refusal of the production team of Newsfile to permit what they termed as the MPP's substandard representation on their program last Saturday. Certainly, such conduct by the second citizen of the land and his party, the MPP, does not advance the freedom and independence of the media guaranteed under Chapter 12 of the Constitution of Ghana. Needless to say, the event itself did not depart from the high dose of propaganda. Half-truth and unsubstantiated claims by Dr. Bawumia has become noted for. We will urge Dr. Bawumia to be mindful of the fact that he is no longer a running mate, delivering propaganda lectures to partisan crowds for political effects, and that he is now sworn in as the Vice President of our Republic. Here are some examples of what we speak of. One, the claim by Dr. Bawumia that Air France recommencing operation in Ghana is an MPP achievement is a palpable untruth. Air France, as far back as 8th August 2016, during the erstwhile NDC government, issued a press release that is still available online through simple Google search, that starting 28th February 2017, Air France will offer 3 weekly flights from Accra in Ghana to Paris. 2, the claim that nursing training admission forms sold at 160 Ghana cedis and that has been reduced to 100 Ghana cedis is another clear case of untruth. Yes. 3, the claim that the new Patriotic Party government has introduced a new policy on sulfur contents is yet another fabrication, considering that as far back as October 4, 2016, the Chief Executive Officer of the National Petroleum Authority, Mr. Moses Asaga, issued a statement that a new policy on Ghana's sulfur content has been approved for implementation in January 2017. They claim that the MPP government completed the draft National Research Fund bill cannot be truthful, as this had long been completed with the input of tertiary education stakeholders and even presented to Cabinet long before the 2016 presidential elections. 5, budgeting and paying outstanding allowances for teachers after validation has long been practiced within the previous NDC government, facilitating a validation committee which includes the teacher unions, Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, the Controller and Accountant General's Department, Ghana Education Service, and the Employment Ministry. They claim that this is a new achievement is most insulting, to say the least. And 6, we note that the communication sector achievement of 47, 48, 49, and 50 are all projects for which President Mahama should be given credit under the World Bank supported $97 million e-transform projects. Ladies and gentlemen, as Dr. Bawumia went on his shopping spree yesterday, looking for non-existing achievements, one could not help but pity him. Even putting together terms of reference for a committee in the health sector was listed as an achievement. How could cutting sod for a cathedral without any secured funding be listed as an achievement? How could the silting of drains be listed as an achievement? How could financial clearance for nurses, which Bawumia's MPP government cancelled and only partially reinstated, be described as an achievement? What happens to the remaining 30,000 and over 22,000 teachers the NDC government had issued financial clearance for only for the MPP government to cancel? Again, how can a national service personnel allowance, which was increased by the NDC government and cancelled by MPP government, be described as an MPP achievement? How can a presidential delivery unit that has always existed under the NDC be described as an MPP achievement? Ladies and gentlemen, either mediocrity or dishonesty is being sent to a new high, or it may be that Dr. Bawumia has a very low view of Ghanaians. Dr. Bawumia must be told in every clear terms that Ghanaians were expecting of him to explain why, after 100 days, there is not a single dam or a single factory project that has commenced in any of the 216 districts, and why instead we are being treated to one region, one vigilante group. We will say no more about what propaganda charade. Ladies and gentlemen, conclusion. It has been 100 days of broken promises. It has been 100 days of gross incompetence, as was classically exhibited in the spare parts fiasco. It has been 100 days of shameful plagiarism, by no mean a person than the president himself. It has been 100 days of proceed on leave and dismissal of over 14,000 workers from the National Service, Cocoa Board, police training, recruits, nurses, teachers, local government service staff, etc. It has been 100 days of hardships. It has been 100 days of deceits. It has been 100 days of wasteful expenditure on presidential swearing-in ceremonies in Accra and Chebi. It has also been 100 days of wasteful expenditure on the Ghana at 60 celebrations. It has been 100 days of terrorism by invisible forces, Delta forces, and all the hidden partisan vigilante forces. Ladies and gentlemen, these are sinister forces on the prowl in our nation. It has also been 100 days of unprecedented bribery and conflict of interest in high places. And as you all know, it is 100 days of 110 ministers. And let me add, it has been 100 days of wahala. Yes, there is no end in sight. Ladies and gentlemen, in our parts, we shall offer the needed support and criticize constructively with a view to spearheading the ailing Akufo Addo government in order that they do not roll back the clock of progress set in motion by the NDC. Ghana cannot wait for 4 years of recklessness. Ghana cannot wait for 4 years of violence, lawlessness, and insecurity. Ghana cannot wait for 4 years of incompetence. Ghana cannot wait for 4 years of hardship. Ghana cannot wait for 4 years of bribery in high places. Ghana cannot wait for 4 years of 110 elephant-sized ministers. Mr. President, listen to the plea of most well-meaning Ghanaians and drastically prune down your government now. And so, with only the next election as an option, we ask the Almighty God for divine intervention in the affairs of this nation. Already, may the Almighty take over the steering wheel. Thank you very much.